What's good, YouTube? It's Rico, and I'm back with another reaction video. So today, reacting to another MMA video. Why so many people think, or fans, fights are fixed in MMA? I don't know why people would think that. I think it's obviously think it's real. I don't think it's fixed at all. But I guess you got people out there that think it's fake and it's like WWE stuff or something like that. So I'm gonna check out the video and see. Let's get right to it.
40 seconds after Herb Dean signaled the start of UFC 246's main event, Conor McGregor was celebrating a victory over Donald Cerrone.
Mr.
In another 40
McNuggets.
seconds, all 2,400 frames of the fight had been scrutinized, analyzed, and written about by thousands, if not millions. And a much repeated observation was that something was not right about this fight, that it was fixed. Rigged. Cerrone took a dive.
They're talking about the McGregor and Cerrone fight, or
instantaneously. It's certainly not
they
the first
talking
time
about
a
a couple of fights, different fights,
and it will not be the last. What I wanted to know is what causes this reaction to be so prominent in the MMA community, and the answers have given me some new perspective on mixed martial arts. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and this is why so many fans think fights are fixed. To say a fight is fixed is to infer that the outcome is not genuine for any variety of reasons. Fans who believe Cerrone took a dive mainly seem to be of the mind that the fight was thrown to protect Conor.
Why would he do that?
Two or more parties
that means less money for the dude, and
that McGregor would win.
I mean, I don't get it. Like that means less money, so you would obviously try to win, so you get another thing is because Conor McGregor is a big name, so why would I lose against the dude? That makes no sense. That would be like an extra drive.
Plotting
yeah, whatever.
To gain an immoral or illegal advantage over someone else without that party's knowledge. And of course, without definitive proof that the main event of UFC 246 was rigged, that belief is a theory, a conspiracy theory. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear that phrase, I think of Alex Jones screaming about interdimensional demons.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
But here's a stat that might sober you up a bit. A study done at the University of Chicago in 2014 determined that at least 50% of the US population believes in at least one conspiracy. So if you're sitting there with someone else watching this right now, chances are that one of you thinks the earth is flat.
Awkward.
I'm kidding, of course. A conspiracy theory can fall on an incredibly wide spectrum, from something as plausible and frankly believable as thinking an MMA fight was rigged, to the other end of things where you might believe reptile aliens have replaced the majority of world leaders and intend to enslave the human race. So in order to remove our own biases we might have about the phrase conspiracy theory as it relates to fight fixes, it's important to consider that spectrum and how many people are actually somewhere on it. Where the MMA community falls on this spectrum is not as easy to define, but psychologists have attempted in recent years to understand the cognitive traits that are found more consistently in those who believe in conspiracies. So with the lens of mixed martial arts, let's take a look at some of this research to see if it can help us understand why so many people believe that fights are fixed. Dr. Joseph Pierre, a health sciences clinical professor at the Department of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences at the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA, did a two-part Q&A with Psychology Today about conspiracy theories, and in that piece touched on the types of traits research has found conspiracy theorists might have. A major foundational piece of that puzzle is a rejection of generally accepted beliefs and authoritative accounts. Mixed martial arts may be more mainstream now, but the sport, to its roots, has always been a counterculture movement. MMA was built on the idea of pushing norms and holding real fights with real consequences. It seems incredibly plausible that the very nature of cage fighting has attracted many fans who believe strongly in bucking the system and not believing everything you're told just because someone is in a position to tell it to you. Look at the skepticism many fans meet promoters like Dana White or Scott Coker with after any statement they make. Bjorn Rebney's failed MMA association was in large part due to the negative reaction to his reputation as a shady figure. One of the most popular memes about Dana White is "Don't believe his lies." There are often hostile reactions that fans have towards MMA media outlets, questioning their legitimacy. We see many dismiss the attempted explanations of fighters who have failed drug tests. There is a vein of anti-authority that runs strongly through the community. Not only that, but MMA fans are often surrogates from the boxing and pro wrestling worlds, two businesses that have long had the reputation of being rife with corruption and deception at the highest levels of authority. There are, of course, exceptions, and a large contingency that seem to take the much more powerful UFC side on a variety of issues related to fighters or the media, but that could in large part be due to the UFC as a brand representing that anti-authority spirit so
and
identify
Wonderboy
with for over 2 decades.
TJ.
So while this fundamental conspiratorial thinking trait doesn't match all fans, it's hard to deny the strength of the attitude Pierre describes amongst many. And remember, it's not as if the entire community is calling fights fixed on a regular basis. Another trait Dr. Pierre describes from his research is a need for what he calls cognitive closure. In other words, conspiratorial thinkers might have a strong need for understanding why something happened, and when there isn't a clear answer, they're often going to look for an answer that lines up with the significance of what they saw, something psychologists call proportionality bias. MMA might be one of the least predictable sports in history.
Oh,
there
double
are so
knockout.
many variables,
You
so
don't
much
see that
happening
often.
before, during, and after a fight. Bouts can end in an instant from one well-placed shot or ill-timed dodge. Experts and the fighters themselves can't even consistently predict outcomes, nor can they oftentimes agree on who should have won a fight on the judges' scorecards. And these are the top minds.
Yeah,
in
that
the
judging
world
these
who face
days
this
getting out of
uncertainty
hand,
of
man. We saw that
outcomes.
on
Imagine just being the average
what was
fan.
it,
Fighting is something
UC
everyone on the planet biologically has
147
programmed
or
into
8
their
or what it was, where
brain,
John
and as
Jones
such,
fought
many of
against
us
Dominic Reyes.
overestimate
That
our
like
understanding of the
that whole
complexity
card
of
was
what
kind of
high-level fighters
fucked
are
up.
doing in the cage. Who has ever even seen someone so effectively use their shoulder the way Conor did against Cerrone? I still can't wrap my head around Anderson Silva's entire career. The point isn't the level of knowledge about the sport, though.
Oh yeah, these
because
shoulders
we've
were
seen plenty of
nasty.
fighters and
The
coaches
shoulders
believe in fight
McGregor
fixes and other
kind of landed on
conspiracies. The point is that even the greatest
Cowboy.
minds find uncertainty in mixed
I
martial
never
arts.
seen anything
So
like
for
that
those
before
who are
either.
inclined to think this way, it only seems inevitable that they would try to assign some closure to a fight that felt strange to them, and many choose to do that by crying foul. I don't think it's a coincidence that many of the oddest looking and biggest fights in MMA history are
Kimbo
also the
and
ones that
Ken
most
Shamrock.
often receive claims of fight fixing. It's perfectly reasonable to think that something odd.
I mean, it looked
is
kind of
odd.
weird, so I still don't know. I don't know how I feel about that
Or
fight,
fix
but
if you're looking to make a huge profit.
I don't know.
goes
It looked
back to
kind
the
of off.
idea of proportionality bias, though. This idea that there
If it
must
was
be some
fixed,
bigger
I don't
explanation
know,
for what
but
happened. The
it
outcomes do
looked
not
off.
seem on scale with the actions in the cage, and with
But
a
I don't think it
understanding
was
about why,
fixed.
many
I don't
fill in an
think.
explanation
I don't
that's
believe in that.
proportional to the significance of the event. How could Cowboy crumble that fast? This was the biggest fight of his life. This had to be a setup. While the psychological studies of cognitive traits often found in those who look for conspiracies is helpful in understanding why we see such a large group believing in regular fight fixes, when considered alongside the many outside factors in mixed martial arts that influence that type of thinker to reinforce that behavior, it's amazing we don't see even more people claiming fights are fixed than we already do. If a viewer were to find a fight suspicious, the first place they're likely to go to discuss the topic is the same place all of us go to discuss mixed martial arts: social media. And as we all do at times, especially if we suspect our viewpoint isn't shared by many others or that it might be ridiculed, we seek out those who might agree with us for validation. It's called confirmation bias. Everyone is guilty of it at times in some way, shape, or form. The term echo chamber has become popular in American politics with the rise of social media because of confirmation bias, with many from both sides sticking to their groups. So it's very easy for a fight fan to log on to their favorite social media platform and find plenty of people who thought a fight looked odd too, or that are outright saying the fight was fixed. And then there's trolls, people spouting off provocative things for the lulz, or because they dislike a certain fighter. A trolling post that says a fight is fixed looks just like one that genuinely means it. This reinforcement by strangers is compounded by influencers who may also post about suspicious fights, and there are plenty that do in mixed martial arts. Nate Diaz tweeted after UFC
Just
246
smoking
that
a
the fight
joint
was
on
fake.
stage. That's
There are
crazy.
many influential fighters and experts who regularly entertain conspiratorial thinking
He
on
just
their
gets
social
ill
media
fucks.
feeds. If you don't believe me, just ask Eddie Bravo to look into it. So we're getting strong confirmation bias by seeking out similar opinions from others. We're getting influential members of the community that encourage that way of thinking. And yes, there are a ton of voices that shoot these ideas down immediately, including influential ones. But the very same happens with all conspiracies, and experts will tell you that there is very little that can be done to change someone's mind on these subjects, not even presenting evidence to the contrary. But it's not just social media where one might be exposed to or have the idea that a fight is fixed reinforced. There are YouTube videos and comments, MMA forums like SureDog and The Underground, podcasts, places all over the web that anyone who follows the sport would regularly visit. A sense of community around these ideas only makes it easier for those
passing the
who
blunt.
have the psychological traits we discussed discussed earlier to
Like it's
entertain
nothing.
conspiratorial thought.
Nick
But
Diaz
there's
is,
one other factor
I mean,
that is
Nate
the
Diaz.
biggest driving force behind why we so regularly see members of the MMA community believing in fight fixes and conspiracies about the sport, and that's that sometimes they're right. It would be incredibly easy to dismiss fans who say a fight is fixed if there had never been a fixed fight proven in the history of mixed martial arts. But of course, that's not true. There's been plenty of shady business in MMA. Cue up that dude getting ghost KO'd against Alexander Emelianenko. There have been fixed fights. There have been unethical practices. There have been controversies that lend themselves to all sorts of speculation. Look at the recent UFC antitrust lawsuit and the deposition that revealed some of the less than savory strategies employed as it relates to contract negotiations. Fighters get caught using PEDs all the time, or USADA botches the whole thing. Remember that situation with the email about Vitor Belfort's unusual testosterone levels, or when that John Jones fight got moved to another state overnight, shady smaller promoters not paying fighters, managers screwing fighters over. How often do we see complaints about something as simple as matchmaking that's clearly in the best interest of a promotion? So while it may seem that many of these claims are outlandish, and some are certainly more so than others, it's not as if
My
the
boy
MMA
Stephen
world
A.
is a
Smith.
squeaky clean place. And for
I still don't know what he's doing in
towards these conspiracies, it sure
why he's
is
covering
a boost
MMA
to
now. I
believe
don't
that something is
know
plausible.
how that
There's
happened
plenty of
though.
real-life examples
You should
we
have
can
stuck
point
to
say that
football
these
and
things do
basketball
sometimes
and all that
happen.
stuff.
So when we add up all these factors, and of course not everyone who believes in a fight fix is going to be affected by every single thing we discussed, you get a much clearer picture of why it is we see this happen so often in mixed martial arts. Through a combination of psychological traits that lend themselves to conspiracy theories, as well as MMA fandom, and the many outside factors that only help to reinforce that conspiratorial thinking, an environment has been created where fight fix accusations have been and will continue to be a regular occurrence. 40 seconds, some weird shoulder shrugs, and a fighter who's known for his toughness losing without landing a single strike was all it took for those inclined to that type of thinking, for those who are regularly influenced by the many aspects of the MMA world that lend themselves to conspiracy, to see that finish and say, this fight was fixed. And while it's very easy for a skeptically minded person like myself to dismiss this line of thinking, Cerrone always struggles with fighters who pressure him. The head kick landed clean. Cerrone broke his orbital and knows why would he take that much damage if the fight was fixed? How is fixing a fight to be the outcome most of us expected worth the risk of jail? Why would you use a technique like a shoulder shrug that immediately
See, that's
makes
what I'm
people
saying.
question
Why
what
would
the hell
he
just
do
happened?
all
Not
that
every
stuff?
fight fix accusation and not
So
every
I don't believe
conspiracy
that fight
in
was
MMA
fixed.
is going to be as full of holes as that one.
Maybe
though.
he like
Maybe
crumbled
so far
under
off the
pressure.
conspiracy
Maybe that
spectrum
happened,
that
but
for
I
me
don't
to
think he
believe
fixed.
in one,
I don't
need
think that
signed
fight
and
was fixed.
notarized affidavits for all parties involved. But the types of situations we're talking about in MMA aren't exactly flat earth, which would require the coordination and silence of thousands upon thousands of people. All it would take to throw a fight is a fighter willing to do it, and some reason worth doing it. Promotions and governing bodies have consistently given fans reasons to be suspicious. So until those factors change, because the psychological nature of human beings will not, we're not going to be seeing the end of MMA conspiracy theories or accusations of fixed fights anytime soon. Really hope you enjoyed this one. I just wanted to mention again that all the psychological knowledge and the basis for this video came from Dr. Joe Pierre's 3 pieces at Psychology Today about conspiracy theories. I recommend giving them a read if this topic interested you. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe. We've got 3 new videos or more for you every single week. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Huge shout out to Max Randall for editing this video together. Follow him on Twitter at Max_Randall. Follow On Point MMA on Twitter, and have yourself a wonderful day.
Alright. That's it with the video. So, I mean, you guys can let me know. If you can let me know in the comments. I still don't believe there are fixed fights. If there are fixed fights, it's probably in the lower leagues, like, I don't know, not Bellator and UFC, not the major ones. So, I don't believe in fixed fight. Maybe those lower budget promotions, or I don't know. But anyways, I'll see you in the next one, guys.